Thanks very much, Phoenix. G'day, everybody. Thanks very much. Welcome to Crowcast for 2016. We're very excited to be with you once again, and we're hoping to bring you some terrific listening for the 2016 season. And I tell you what, for the first evening, we haven't messed about. We've got the big heavyweights from the board on this evening. It's Nikki New with us tonight. How are you, Nikki?
Not too bad, Pete.
Very good to hear from you. And we've got the big fella out there, one of the moderators. How are you, big fella?
Well, thanks, Peter.
And we've got Deniz with us as well. How are you, Deniz from Canberra?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Pete.
Mate, we're truly national tonight. It's great to have all of this technology. So without further ado, we'll get into a bit of a chat about 2016 and how we're looking. And first of all, as you probably would have heard on the board, we had a little bit of a meeting down at Crayland with the great Andrew Fagan and Shuts. And big fella, I'm going to throw to you because I think you're probably all over what we can actually mention and what we can't until your fabulous notes come out. So perhaps you could just let the listeners know a little bit about what we talked about on the day.
Sure, Pete. So, again, it was really a real privilege, really, to be invited down to the club last Thursday. There are a number of us there. Myself, Phoenix, Peter, yourself, and Nikki were all present, as well as Bacon and Henry. Yes, Henry, our new moderator. So we got down to the club. The club's always been very welcoming since we reached out to them to keep the engagement going. So when I reached out to them over the off-season to talk about having a chat, we had a good chat down there with them. They gave us a bit of an update on a number of things about where they're heading and what their intentions are this year. I think one of the good things from my perspective was that Andrew Fagan remembered our chat from last year, and he actually targeted Henry with some discussion around the hoops were back on the jumpers, because Henry brought that up last time we talked. I don't think Henry believes that it was all his doing, but he might possibly. So that was really good, just from a real personal notice that the club actually recorded visually what we'd mentioned last year, given everything else that happened last year at the club. So we had a bit of a chat about jumpers again and logos. We had a bit of a chat about, I don't know, Nikki, I'm going to throw to you and say what we might have talked about. Don't go in detail just yet, but I'm struggling to remember.
Just on the jumpers as well, it did mention about the yellow and it being a bit faded, because we know that's a bit of an issue on the board, and both Shuts and Fags were very keen, I know, and took notes about that one. So we'll see what comes of that. We might finally get a proper yellow from BLK. There was a little bit of discussion around Essendon and just whether the club's standing to do with that.
Yeah, there was. I think that's probably obviously something we want to make sure we've got the message clear from the club on
yes,
how we interpreted what they said.
Yeah, I think we'll wait. We'll just wait and see. But I thought that was a really interesting discussion. Talked a bit about the women's team and how that kind of feeds into a much larger thing that they're doing regarding engagement of the female supporters of the club, etc.
Yeah, I thought that was a very good chat, actually. Sorry, Phoenix.
Yeah.
Absolutely did, and look forward to when we can share a bit more information around how the club views that. I certainly enjoyed Nikki chipping in with her own personal experiences from her female football days. They were good.
I'm quite pleased that they're going to get paid. That's a rarity.
Can I just paint a bit of a picture for the listeners out there now? Like, we're just, a bunch of scrubbers, getting on the internet, and all of a sudden I'm at the bloody door of the Adelaide Football Club, if you don't mind. I'm at the door of the boardroom, and I'm absolutely terrified. Like, there's pictures of Mark Rochot, there's pictures of the board, and you go in there, and there's the big chairs, and and I'm thinking, geez, and I'm just, listeners out there, like, put yourself in that position. I'm absolutely bloody terrified. And I sit down, and if you don't mind, the CEO of the Adelaide Football Club, if you don't mind, actually him. And so we sit down, and we're all terrified, and bloody big fella orders a tea. You know, I was really terrified. And the girl comes in and says, oh, you know, and Fag says, do you want something? And I'm just sitting there like, you know, I just am terrified and thinking, well, obviously I'm not going to anything. And big fella says, I'll have a bloody tea. Jeez, I tell you what, mate, fella got balls in me.
Yeah,
the muffins were nice, though.
In all honesty, it's a reflection of myself, not too much though. I think it's more a reflection of how engaged the footy club's been from Fagan and Shuts down to the other guys who've contacted me throughout the year once we started the establishment. So I think there's a great reflection on them, as well as a bit of cheekiness from me.
Mate, I wouldn't have even asked the toilet. I would not even ask where the toilets were. I really wouldn't have. I had a what? Sorry, mate. You're absolutely right, and that was exactly what I need. Because even if I had to go, I would not have moved.
But I mean, Peter, you and Phoenix were there for the first time. How did it feel to see how open and transparent they were willing to be?
Honestly, mate, I actually could not believe I was sitting there. Obviously, I couldn't believe that big fella ordered tea, but I'll get past it. I couldn't believe I was sitting there, and you know, it's Andrew Fate. You know, he's sitting there, and he's just telling us about a whole lot of stuff. He's telling us about, you know, income streams. He's talking about, you know, plans. Talking about, you know, Shuts. They're talking about lists. He's talking about, you know, Hampton. Talking about all this stuff, and I just couldn't believe it. I thought, you know, I'm sitting there. I just thought, I'm in a bloody dream. I mean, really, you know, you're in there. You're in the boardroom talking to the CEO. It's quite amazing.
So who had the muffin first? Was it Fagan or you, Peter?
No, Fagan had the muffin first.
Yes, you're right, Nikki. Fags dived into the muffin, and I'm surprised, big fella, you didn't dive into a muffin to go with your tea. I'm surprised.
I was actually a bit disappointed because there was only 6 muffins and there were 8 people, and it seemed like it was a bit of a challenge.
I did tell you all I was going to win.
That was one of the first things you can see when he came in, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But you know what I loved? I loved is that in amongst all that terror, you know, and you're just sitting there, and you know, just like you know, you're like kids with the headmaster coming in, and bloody Hank just ripped into him about the Guernseys, and it was fantastic, wasn't it? The way he did it.
I was going to say, if you're saying I was fearless ordering a tea, I was keen to hear your thoughts on Henry. He is absolutely fearless, and he's passionate about those topics that he feels are really important, and he just lets them have it.
He just let him have it right between the eyes. He just let him have it. It was fabulous.
He even had the nerve to talk over Fags a couple of times, which I just sat back and had a smile and thought, geez, you're pretty ballsy doing that.
But I think that's what Fags appreciates, though, and Shuts was the impression that's what I got. They want to find out what we think and how the club can get better and sort of how we perceive the club. And I was thinking about it afterwards when Fagan was talking about the We Flyers won, that he doesn't like calling a tagline. And I thought of it at the time, and I really should have said it, because no, that isn't our tagline. That's our identity now. Yeah,
absolutely. I remember when we started, I was keen to get the topics rolling because we didn't have that much time, gentlemen, and we sort of had that nice little personal chat about their working hours and stuff at the start. But I was really happy when we threw to the topic around the Crowcast, how supportive they were keen to be of this Crowcast this year.
Yeah, look, I think that's a really, really good point, and it's something that the listeners should really con on to, because they were very, very supportive of the podcast, and we encourage everybody to get on board with the podcast this year, because the club certainly are, and they will be giving us access to players and staff members, and it all goes well for a terrific year on the podcast here on the cast.
Not sure I'm going to be able to handle having players and staff members on the podcast. I feel like it's just a bit of a chat at the moment.
Well, it's a bit like that way. You know, we've got experienced campaigners like Big Fella who will just, you know, get the whoever's.
Sorry, Dave, can you say that again, mate?
Say that again.
Are you talking to me or Pete?
Danos.
I just said I'm not sure I can handle having players and staff members on. It's just more a bit of a chat. Becomes a little bit professional with players coming on.
That is pretty nice of that.
Actually, one of the other things that really impresses me, and I guess you guys can chip in after with your thoughts on particular aspects that impressed you talking to Fagan and Schutz, is that there are a couple of topics where, and probably talking to staff members was one of them, where they needed to be very clear around expectations, and they were immediately both on it, and they were both very clear and consistent with their messaging. I thought that reflected to me, it was only a minor thing, but it reflected to me how on message and how aligned they are internally.
Yeah, they're very clear about what, how they want the club to go and how they want it to be, not so much seen, but I think that thing that you just said there, that messaging that they want it out and how consistent they want it to be, that came through to me.
Yeah, it seemed to me that they were very keen to engage on all levels, and some of the stuff that we can't just talk about right now was very much in line with trying to engage not only paid up ticketing members, but everyone who walks around with a Crows scarf or a Crows beanie or a Crows t-shirt or watches the Crows every weekend. So, there's a lot of good things in store, I reckon.
Yeah, look, I really think that for the, I mean, obviously we can't say everything was talked about, but I think the really important takeaway for all of those people listening, all the people that join Big Footy, is that the things that you put forward on the internet forums, you might think that you're just there late at night, just being a dick, just being on the internet, but it is serious stuff, and the club does pay attention, and they do give us a voice. And I think it's important that as a Big Footy, as a community of passionate Crow supporters, it's a great thing to be a part of, and I think that has been supported by the club itself, and so that we're not just some kind of fringe element that's out there on the margins. We are actually considered by the club, and we get an audience, and when you think that Fague sits down and says, well, Hank told me about the bloody hoops last year, and so now the hoops are on. So I mean, it's a really they take us seriously, and so for the community out there, they're on Big Footy. Stay with it. Join. Get your friends to join up, and increase our the members that we've got, because it's an important forum for the club.
Well, let's face it, Hank's pretty possessive.
Yes, he is.
I want to know
what really impressed me the most.
Hang on, Nikki. Who's on bloody Skype and doing work and dinging? Is that you, big fella?
Sorry, guys, I'm dropping out.
We can't be having that.
It's entertaining.
Of course it would be him.
We might have to moderate you out, mate. This is a professional show here. It's not like moderating a bloody forum. This is big time, and he's gone. Anyway, carry on.
He's run away. No, what impressed me was the fact that we had an hour scheduled with them, but literally we were there for 2 hours. That Fagan was like, no, I'm happy. I've got the time. We can keep going. He then had to have 10 minutes left before he met with Mark Evans from the AFL.
It was pretty amazing that he wasn't, because I know there was a couple of times that the big fella said to him, "Look, are you right for time?" He said, no worries, let's keep going. He was not in any hurry at all to kick us out of the building.
No, and I think it was deliberately that time they actually did leave extra, just in case it did run over. And it was. I found it quite interesting that when he saw in his meeting diary the week before that he was meeting with us, and he was really interested in that, and he was looking forward to it.
Someone in saying that there was about 7 or 8 of you there with Fagan Schutz.
6.
Hang on, I'll look. Yes.
There was 6.
How many was there last time, guys? Was there 4?
6. I maxed out every time.
So there's been
Yeah.
so both times there was 6 people.
Yeah.
Oh right, okay.
Anyway, terrific, exciting times, and it was a really, really it was a fabulous morning. And as I said to all the listeners out there, make sure you continue putting your idea forward because the club does listen, and it's magnificent that we've now got a connection with the club. And that I think also what's really important is because and I'm not just wadding in your pocket, big fella. The way that you've handled it, obviously have a lot of respect for the way you've dealt with this. And they obviously trust you, and that's a magnificent thing because it means that the connection that we've got is strong, and it's a credit to you the way you've handled it. So, all right, that's enough of the meeting. Notes will come out in due course. So look out for those on the board. There'll be some incredibly interesting reading once the Big Fell's got his notes in order. Right, so shall we move along to the internal trial that took place on Friday? We've got. Of course, it was all blocked out, but we had some bits and pieces and some snippets come through from the interviews. Maybe, Nikki, could you lead us off and tell us what your thoughts were of the trial and how it might impact on this week's game?
Oh, this is going to be good. I've got no idea what went on because we couldn't really see anything. By the look of it, from the photos I could see that the club put up, that it seemed to be fairly even teams, although I think on the white team that defence was looking particularly strong when you had Lever and Talia and trying to think who else there were. But it looked to be a very strong defence on that one side. And interestingly, Govan was up against that defence and he kicked 4 goals. Don Pike's been on 5AA and he was on SEN this morning, which I know Daniel's listened to as well, and talked about how they wanted a fairly even team on each side, and said they got that in a how he was really pleased with the ball movement. Still needs to work on a defence. Who else has said some stuff about who played well?
B Crouch, 40 touches.
Do we know how many touches he got? We just know saw.
No, I had 40 touches because I listened to that SEN interview as well, and I heard someone else talking about it. Lazy 40 is a bit sore. Pikey reckon because he probably went a bit harder than he should have, but he's sore, but not in his foot, so it's just general soreness from not playing much compared to 40.
And I kind of think.
That's a much better story. That's a much better story than I had been imagining. I'd only heard sore part and 40 possessions part.
Yeah, and the fact that it's not his foot is really awesome. Apparently, he pulled up unscathed in that regard. He was just a bit sore because he was getting amongst it. He's probably hanging out because he hasn't played footy for so long.
Yeah, I suspect he kind of went a bit harder.
What was the news you guys were most excited about hearing about the game before I share mine?
Oh, McGovern with 4.
Yeah, that's it for me too, Nikki.
And I did like Pike also talked about that Rob was up against Jacobs, and he said Sam, of course, won that as you would expect, but he thought that was really good. That Rob showed some good signs as well. I think we've definitely got a nice little one there. So that
do we have any ice cube of Ray Brown?
Look, I was so impressed with him in the SANFL last year. For a 19-year-old kid, he was probably the third best ruckman in the SANFL last year. That's pretty damn good.
For ruckman to come on early and show that they're willing to compete and their ability to compete is gold. I mean, we don't expect their ruck to come good till 24, 25.
Especially since he was picked up as a rookie as well.
Pete, stop doing your dishes.
He's in a hotel room. He shouldn't be doing any dishes.
I just want a completely objective view. As I heard Tomo interviewed on the radio, and strangely enough, mentioned Rory Atkins, and I, completely objective on this, but
completely.
He mentioned that the had a very good game, but he also, and I've heard this from a couple of different sources, that John O'Beach impressed as well and took a couple of big marks, which prompted me to go onto the prediction thread and say that of the year after being promoted and playing 6 games at a minimum. But no, Jono Beach is a very, very good player, and he's a very, very good SANFL player. And it's going to be very, very interesting because he will play SANFL football for us. Play well. He'll play well because he always does. And it'll be interesting to see what pressure that puts on selectors.
I think the fact that
John O'Beach competing with McGovern spot, Peter, because I've been hearing things about McGovern for a while and hearing how the internal trial kicked 4. I'm kind of hoping he really comes on and sort of plays that extra third tall target forward. Do you think Beach and he are competing for a spot?
Yeah, quite possibly. Jono Beach sort of plays around that wing half forward spot for Westies. Can play on ball and drift forward. So, funny story. When I was the under 17s team manager at Westies, that goes back quite a while. But Jono Beach was in my under 17s team, so I've got a little bit of a soft spot for him. As was Reece Stanley and Hamish Hartlett. So we had a reasonable side back in those days. So I have got a soft spot for Jono Beach. He's Westies boy from the Riverland. He's 25 years old, but he has been carving up the SANFL for a long time, and I think he's been an excellent pickup, and I would be very, very surprised if he doesn't put pressure on selectors. But Denoz, in answer to your question, yes, I think that he's the kind of guy that will, drift through half forward. He's a very, very strong overhead player. He takes great mark and kicks goals.
But there's 4 centimetres difference.
Gov's taller.
Yeah, Gov's taller. 191 to 187.
But Jono Beach plays tall.
Yeah, he does.
And he's got a hell of a spring, and he is a magnificent mark overhead.
I think that describes all of Gov's characteristics too. He's just a bit younger.
I think Gov is a more natural forward. He's a guy that will start forward and play tall as a forward and lead and all those things. Whereas Jono Beach is more of a I'm just on the hop here. I'm trying to think of who I'd compare him with, but he's more of a player that will start in the midfield and drift forward. Does that make sense?
It does.
So you're saying he's Darren Jarman?
Yep. D. Jarman. No, but he's do you know what I mean? Yeah,
Please pull one out again.
He is that kind of player that he's more of an on ball that'll drift forward. But he's a rangy, long-striding kind of guy, and he's beautiful to watch. Very good football.
Wasn't he high up in the Kenny Farmer last year, Pete?
Jono Beach?
Yeah.
I'd be able to tell you, but I was kind of away for most of last year, so I'm not sure how that ended up. But it wouldn't surprise me if he kicked quite a few goals.
So, Pikey on SEN today was talking. They asked him a bit about Season. They reckon that the Seed will probably get his first real pre-season or NAB Cup run in his career, because apparently he didn't play much pre-season for Collingwood. And also interesting comments about Menzel in terms of, I had the impression that Pikey was really trying to manage expectations with Menzel.
Yeah, because we know he's got this huge, insane talent, because I've heard that a couple of players, when they've talked about the things that he's done just in training drills, that the boys just kind of stand back and just in awe of what he can do. And I saw it a little bit at the training I went to last year, the end of last year. He just does some stuff instinctively that is just insanely brilliant. But we know he's coming from a very poor fitness base with Carlton.
Yeah, that was the thing that Pikey mentioned, that he was a bit behind the 8 ball fitness-wise, and that's basically the goal with Menzel, to bring his fitness levels up to AFL standard, or certainly out of Adelaide Footy Club standard. It was interesting to, I also heard, I think it was Mark Murphy this afternoon on SEN, and interesting to hear him talk about Sam Kerridge. And one of the main things he talked about Kerridge was the fact that for a 22-year-old, he had fantastic leadership skills and an amazing fitness base. And I think, aside from the fact that I cry every time we talk about losing Kerridge, I think it's indicative of the professionalism of our club in terms of our fitness and our leadership program. So I thought that was really good to hear from a club point of view, that someone like Sam Kerridge can step into a new club as a relatively young player and immediately stand out.
I think what's really good, Phoenix, that I've noticed over probably just the last 2 seasons, really, is we used to hear about how fit we were 5-6 years ago with Craigie, and we all sort of like stopped believing it. Or I certainly did at some point when the team just wasn't performing. But as we've had more player movement to our club and from our club, nearly everybody seems to repeat the same message. They get players from the Crows and they're in good nick. Guys come here and find that the training's a lot harder than it was back at their club. That seems to be a fairly consistent message.
Yeah, well, Hampton was
and
another
we
one
also
who
had
mentioned
Hampton.
that.
Yeah, the fact within GWS when he was there, but also talking with other players around the league, they all talk about how fit and how hard Adelaide train.
Pete, are you all right? Like, what's going on? It's like you're getting broken into.
No, I was just getting myself a coffee, that's all.
Very noisy coffee.
Sorry, I shouldn't have been.
Just FYI, Pete, John beat 8th in the Kenny Farmer with 35 goals last year.
Yeah, and that's a pretty good return from a guy that, you know, would generally sort of play in the midfield and push up.
Yeah, Dan Oz, by the way, that's your job, mate, not mine.
I was waiting for a chance to kick in. I've got it open in front of me, big fella.
I can't tell you what we're doing.
What is your role, big fella, by the way? In this
I wasn't
particular
even supposed
discussion?
to be hit, was I?
I don't know whether you were. You just kind of bulldozed your
No,
way
you've
in.
just pushed in.
Careful, I moderate.
But I mean, without wanting to push the point on Beach, you know what? Do you know what I mean? Like he's been playing really good SNFL football for the last 4 or 5 years. He's not going to suddenly start playing badly for us. He's going to keep playing really well. No. Now, does that? Given that he's a rookie, and this question to you, to all of you, he will keep playing well. That will happen. So, what sort of pressure as a rookie is that they're going to put onto selectors?
I don't think it puts any pressure on him, to be honest with you. And interestingly, we're just talking about Kerridge. I actually think he's a very similar player to Sam, to be honest with you. And Kerridge couldn't find a spot. I don't reckon there's a spot for Beach either.
I think what it does, it makes everybody else who's above him has to keep on top of their game because they know what's snapping at their heels.
I certainly think there seems to be just a sense I've had. I was obviously away for a couple of months in Canada over the off season, so I haven't been as close. I haven't been able to get to training, but you certainly get a sense there's a very even view of contributions the way Pikey's setting up the team to play. So just immense talent over and above other players won't be what cuts the mustard. It's going to be who can fit into the roles and fit into the team well. And I guess that's been a bit of a motto of ours for a while. I just certainly get a sense that Pikey's even more in favour of that.
Certainly versatility seems to be the theme. I'd imagine our midfield rotations are going to be our strength because I think we bat pretty deep with bit players, players that can roll through for 1 or 2 clearances just to break a tag or to mix up matchups and that sort of thing. Again, I think our defence is probably going to be our weak spot if we have one. But I'm interested to see how our midfield sets up without danger and who is the guy that's going to take the bull by the horns, whether it's Ellis Yeoman or whether it's someone like a Mitch Grigg or someone like that. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how we set up in the midfield.
Or a Gore. He apparently played quite well in the trial.
Yeah, well, Pike again said on SEN that Gore's the type of guy that just you love to coach because he rocks up and does his thing every week and every training session, and eventually guys like that find a way to break into the team. So you get the impression that Pikey's relatively impressed with him. Whether he's got the tricks to be a full-time midfielder at this stage, who knows? But I'd probably favour Ellis Yeoman. I don't know why he fell out of favour in the second half of the year, but I reckon he's probably got first crack, maybe Mitch Grigg as well.
Sorry, who did you say?
Ellis Yeoman.
Ellis Yeoman, yeah.
Do we think he fell out of favour, or do we think maybe it took a bit longer than others to cope with the tragic circumstances?
I think it's an unknown. That's the hard thing. I think I've said this on the board. It's really hard to make a value judgment on last year after Walsh passed away, and players, because you don't quite know what was going on in the background. So it could have been that for his benefit that maybe the AFL wasn't for him. He was playing really well in the SANFL, but that we know there's a step up from SANFL to AFL. It might be that the club or whatever didn't think that was going to be beneficial, to him. I actually heard some other people kind of mentioned that they thought McKay as well was kind of, I know there's a lot on the board who hate him and wish he isn't playing in Ant's side or whatever, but we know he can actually play and he can play well. He had some decent games prior to that. If you actually look at a lot of our highlights for the year, a lot of them actually feature McKay as part of that link. So he's another one that could have been a little bit interesting. It's really hard to tell.
Is McKay the guy that the ball rebounded off and went into someone else's hand so that we could continue the run of play?
Yeah, Dangerfield kicked it into the back of his head and then took the mark off his head.
Yeah, I think that was McKay's
it's about danger than anything.
I think with me we can definitely look at whether he is selected again this year. If he is selected again this year, then that's 5-6 coaches that have been happy to put him aside. And as much as we, the supporters, think that he's not doing the things that he needs to do, the coaching staff are the ones who know what's happening. And if they keep selecting him, then he's obviously doing something right. Or on the other hand, he is a guy who we didn't have anyone who could come and play his role, and so had to be getting selected. So if we saw guys like Seaton and Hampton coming in and taking his spot on the wing, then we know that it was only a lack of depth that was keeping him in the side.
Yeah, possibly. Phoenix, I want to go back to a comment you just made a minute ago, mate. You talked about defence being our weak spot. I actually have an opinion that they did pretty well last year, and I expect them to be better again this year. I actually think our midfield stuff is more questionable to me just because of the sheer unknown factor of it now, rather than our defence. Do you care to retort to that?
Certainly, Mr. Moderator. I think it's just a matter of depth more than anything else. I think we've got a lot of people that can run through the midfield. Whether they're all as effective as we'd hope is another thing. But I think personnel-wise, we're stacked to the eyeballs with midfielders. But I think we're vulnerable down back, and we're relying probably on a couple of players to continue to improve. Hardigan, I'm a bit of a fan of, but he's definitely got to improve. Sam Shaw's a bit of an unknown. We're running new guys off halfback, possibly with particularly Hampton. Sounds like he might run off the halfback. I think looking after the smalls and the medium size isn't too bad, but our ability to chop out tall timber, particularly against teams like West Coast, is really going to be tested again this year. And if we're going to push top 4, we're going to have to be able to combat those sort of teams. And I don't know. I'm hopeful that Sam Shaw will come up because he has got talent. But
he was playing well.
Yeah, but again, I don't know whether he plays on tall timber. Does he play on a Jack Darling or I don't know.
He had resting ruckman at times last year.
Yeah, he might have had them, but I don't know. I think Jake's going to be tested this year because he's probably going to be asked to play on tools at various points in time. And I reckon a few teams might try and play through him and expose him, to be honest with you.
Well, that'll tell us a lot about whether Jake can stand up in the clinches then.
He's absolute quality. Besides injury, I have no doubt that he's going to come on in spades this year.
I agree.
You'll never get anything except 100% from him. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Whether he has physically developed enough yet is against a big body like a Jack Darling, for example. Time's only going to tell. I hope for the kid that he does because he's a bloody great player. But he might just be a year short, and I reckon that's where we might be a little bit vulnerable this year.
So does that? Will we be going in with Talia, Hardigan, and Lever, or those 3 roles every game this year, or do you think we'll only have 2 at different stages?
All 3 fit, I reckon.
Because Lever can play smaller as well as taller.
Yeah, he can.
And it's not teams now.
He can play on a fast medium player too.
He can, and he can also play on the second tool and leave it to play on a third tour. Leavers, I think, both big Dunstan type.
Yeah, exactly.
Hardigan's a lot quicker than what a lot of people don't realise. He's quite fast.
Didn't he? He was rated as the second fastest at a short distance at the club, wasn't he?
Over 20 metres, yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Well, Jenkins is up there.
Yeah, Jenkins as well. Yeah.
Folks, I might just jump in and push it along. We're probably 20 minutes to go, so I think it's probably an ideal opportunity, given we're talking about the players and some of the positions. How does everybody see the match coming up on Sunday? We've got obviously the first NAB Challenge game against the West Coast Eagles down there at Unley Oval. They'll scrape off the dog poo and get everybody from walking their dogs off the oval. And we'll actually game down there on Sunday. That'd be absolutely amazing. And it's also the other thing I want to put to you all as well is what are we going to do about the awful bloody weather conditions we've got down there on Sunday? It's going to be dreadful conditions.
It's going to be stinking hot.
Throw it out to you. What's the kind of lineup we're going to be looking at? What are the kind of things we're going to be looking at from a game plan and player point of view? But also, what are we going to be looking at from the weather point of view?
Well, first of all, they've already said that they will be pushing the start time back if it's still 39 degrees at the start time. Second of all, I think they're probably going to have an extra couple on bench, and I think that way they're going to be able to manage the workloads of the players, and I think that's the most important thing in the first preseason game.
Did anyone hear Dougie and talking to Charles and Louis on the radio the other day? He's all the senior players are queuing up to play the second half.
Because of the heat?
Why?
Because of the heat.
Well, it sort of makes sense, but you'd think as a player, you'd be wanting to take whatever opportunity you could get. But I suppose
except
that
for the guys who are proven, mate. That was sort of the joke that he had with it, that the senior players, Tom Owen and Sauce and himself and a few other guys would try and play a second half because they probably didn't need to put everything into it like some of the young guys do.
Well, on that note,
it's actually a bit of a fair point.
Yeah, it is. I'd love to see McGovern start at full forward and Malera start on his wing, on a wing.
I'd actually like to see McGovern play a bit loose, a bit floating across the front kind of guy. I reckon if he's manned up directly at full forward, he won't be as effective as if he can be loose.
And maybe Harry Deer at full forward then. They've been saying that he's been looking pretty good too.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah,
Harry Deer during training, they've been having him shadow Walker,
and that's such a good idea.
I really want.
And he was beating him.
I want to see to put some pressure on JJ this year, just so that we get the maximum out of Jenkins, because he seems to need a rocket, and maybe someone pushing up behind him is going to be the impetus he needs to kick it up a gear.
Has anyone got a feel whether we'll see Deer this weekend? Do we think that it's going to be the week for a lot of these younger players to get a run, and then as we move towards round 3 of the NAB Challenge, look to settle the side and give the more experienced guys again round 2 and 3?
Well, that's traditionally how we've gone about it.
I think I'd be careful though, and it wouldn't surprise me if Pikey sees it the same way. He's got a new style of play, and it's his first hit out as a coach. I think he's going to want to get a certain amount of confidence in what he's got the team doing. Whether he needs to play senior guys more in NAB, I'm not sure how that fits, but I think he'll definitely maybe play some of the senior guys a bit more consistently, spread out to the young guys who maybe start through to it.
How I think it'll go is with the extended bench and what's going on Sunday is that we'll have, I reckon it'll be half and half with the senior and the younger guys getting pretty much an equal run. And then a few more of the younger guys I reckon will take on the trip over to Western Australia because it's that longer trip. So some of the older ones can...
Eating yourself.
Yeah, me off. And then it'll be a bit closer to the full strength side for our final game at Macon.
Yeah, I'd say that, particularly given the temperature this weekend, high rotations, a lot of different roles, probably exposing guys like Deer and McGovern and those sorts to a bit of an extended run, but I don't think we'll see many senior players getting more than a quarter and a half.
There's a player that I want to the name I want to put to you guys, Sam Shaw. Where do you see Sam Shaw? Do you see him almost in the group of those younger guys, sort of trying to burst through and get a game and see how he goes, or just how do you see his sort of position within the pack in terms of getting a game?
He's putting pressure on Hardigan, Talia, Lever for that kind of role. Ramsey as well. Ramsey's another one that we've played down back. Towards the end of the last season in the SNFL, Shaw was playing quite well, and I think I only saw 2 bad kicks from him, and they weren't that bad.
My opinion is that if Sam Shaw can stay fit and get his confidence back in his body, he will be the third tall for the Adelaide Footy Club. I think his ability to spoil the football is about the best as in the squad, maybe apart from Talia. And his athleticism to play big and small and do the 1%ers. He actually led our team in 1%ers back in 2012. I think if he can stay fit and get confident, he'll be great for us in that role. I just actually don't believe he will get fit or confident.
Well, I agree with you, big fella. And before we carry this on anymore, the limitations of our platform mean that I have to. We get 45 minutes of live broadcast, so I'm going to cut us off now. And stay tuned. We'll be back in about 2 minutes for part 2 for the last 15 minutes of the show.
Bye.
Can I go for a wee?
Yep, you got time.
Can you put